But what if I wanted just a blank board?
那是白板的，
That I know.
白板的，白板就是它新开一个，你就怎么新开？
Just for future reference, we don't have to do it tonight. It's okay.
这儿不是有个妞
Oh, there it is.
Yes.
Oh, cool. I might try that tonight.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Rhea. All right. Here we go. And it's fine now. Okay, great. All right. And I made.
还没有声音吗？
All right. All right. So tonight we're actually going. Good evening.
大家晚上好，声音清楚吗？
We're going to start off tonight with a couple of questions.
我们今天晚上开始先回答一些问题。
Now you may have already read these questions since they've been posted up here.
你们可能也读了这些问题。
So what I'm going to do, well, let's close that door. All right. Well, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to read out the question in English, okay? My question is as follows. Oops. Hold on. I don't know why I did that. Is the very house that the true node or the mean node falls into really important? And the answer is yes.
那么这个问题是真实的焦点或平行焦点进入的真正宫位真的重要吗？那么大卫的回答是是的，重要。
I remember David once said that the house dust was something like the energy zone of waves. Yes.
那么大卫老师曾经讲过，宫头是类似波浪的能量区域，那么确实是这样的。
Then will the planet on the house cusp only have influence on the house it falls into, or will it affect both houses?
那么就是落入宫头的行星到底是只影响它总落入宫位呢，还是两个宫位都影响？
If a planet is conjunct a house cusp, it affects that house.
那么如果一个行星它合向了一个宫头，那么实际上呢，我们就说它是落在那个宫里的。
Here are the two reasons.
有两个理由。
One, we will use an orb of conjunction of 5 degrees.
一个是我们是用5度的容许度。
So the planet has to be at least within 5 degrees of that cusp to be conjunct.
所以说呢，至少它要落在5度的容许度之内，我们算它是合相。
But here's the most important principle to remember.
但是最重要的一个原则是这样的，你们一定要记得。
When a planet is conjunct a house cusp, it has already been in that house for approximately 2 hours.
当一个行星它合向一个宫头的时候，实际上我们可以说这个行星大概已经在那个宫已经是有2个小时了。
So the Earth, in turning on its axis, we know that each house can vary a little bit in time, sometimes a little less than 2 hours, sometimes a little more. But if that planet is conjunct that cusp, realize that for at least the last couple of hours, it has been moving through that house. So it's had the experience of that house.
那么因为呢，地球呢，它这个地轴是倾斜的，那么这个宫头呢，有的宫大一些，有的宫小一些，所以说有的时候通过一个宫呢是2个小时，有的时候就是多多少少。但是如果这个行星已经在那个宫头了，实际上我们可以说它已经在那个宫里面已经有，就是说它经过那个领域已经有2个小时了。
Now, also remember that interpretation is an art.
另外呢，你们也要记得，星图解盘呢是一个艺术。
And we're doing the best we can with the tools of measurement that we have.
我们是用我们这样一个测量工具，能尽可能的做的比较好。
And so, if
Oh, they say my sound is not clear. Yeah, echo.
echoes?
现在还是有那个共振吗？有回音吗？
There's no echoes in this room. It's very odd. If there's an echo.
Let's go.
Okay, all right. Okay. Was there another question here?
No, please, go ahead.
Okay. Now, suppose a planet is just outside of that 5-degree orb.
如果一个行星呢，它在那个5度冷水度之外，
Then the question will be, well, does it influence both houses?
那么这个问题可能就是它是不是2个宫它都影响呢？
And then the answer would be yes.
那么那个答案就是说是的。
Though it starts to influence the new house that it's moving into, that house that it's leaving, because it's actually leaving that house when it's on the cusp, see, still has a little lingering influence.
那么它开始影响下一个宫位了，但是因为它在离开前一个宫位，所以说呢，对于前一个宫位呢还是有影响的。它是在那个好像是在那个徘徊的有那种影响。
The houses are not as clear in their line of definition as the signs.
那么宫位呢，它的对就定义来说，不像星座那么的清晰，就是它不是像那么一斩，就是说斩钉截铁的这个宫位的分界线就是那样了。
Right. The signs of the zodiac are very clear measurement.
那么黄道的星座是非常清晰的测度。
But as we know, there are many house systems.
但是呢，就如我们所知，有很多的宫位制。
At least a dozen or more that are in use today.
那么至少有一半有12种宫位制，现在世界上面的人都在应用。
Okay. And what I will do is look at that planet and make a determination as to which house it influences the most by how far away it is from that house.
那么我会看一下那个行星，会看一下它离那个宫头线有多远，然后去看，再决定一下到底它在影响哪个宫。
Okay. Suppose you had the moon at 23 degrees of Sagittarius.
比如说你的月亮是射手座23度，
And your 12th house cusp was 26 degrees of Sagittarius.
那你的12个宫头呢是射手座26度。
Technically, the moon is in the 11th house,
那技术上说呢，月亮是在11宫，
but it is then conjunct the 12th house cusp.
不过呢，它实际上是合相的12宫宫头。
And therefore, that moon has been rising in the 12th house for at least the last 2 hours.
实际上说这个行星呢，它至少是在过去2个小时是在12宫。
And I can tell you from experience that the moon will express itself in such a case as 12th house and not 11th house.
那么我可以再告诉大家，从我的实践经验看，那么这个月亮更像是12宫的月亮，而不是11宫的月亮。
And this is true consistently all the way around the chart.
那么这个对所有星图的这些宫位都是合适的，而且它这个是非常一致的这种表现。
Suppose, for example, Mars was in Capricorn at 15 degrees.
假设火星在摩羯座15度，
And the 11th house cusp was 18 degrees of Capricorn.
那么11宫宫头呢是摩羯座18度。
Technically, you would say, wow, Mars is in the 10th house.
那么你可能从技术上说，火星在第10宫。
And already you'd be thinking, gee, it's Mars in Capricorn, which is kind of like the 10th house.
那你也会想，这是火星在摩羯座，它也像10宫一样。
But it's conjunct the 11th house cusp.
但实际上呢，它合相了11宫宫头。
How does the person then express that Mars?
那么这个人会怎样的表达他的火星呢？
Well, it's still Mars in Capricorn, which means they're going to be competitive.
那么还是那个摩羯座的火星，这意味着他们还是会很有竞争力的。
They like to win,
他们喜欢赢，
don't like to lose,
他们不喜欢输。
get angry about losing,
他们要输了，他们就会很生气。
try to disguise that they're angry about losing. This is Mars in Capricorn.
他也想去掩饰， 如果他输了，去掩饰他那种挫败感。因为火星在摩羯座。
But if it's conjunct the 11th house cusp, this expresses itself in groups and in teams.
但是如果是它合向11宫的巫火的话呢，那么这种情况呢，就更多的在团体中表现出来。
This might be someone who competes within a team or group framework.
那么这个人呢，可能会在这个团体的构架中去竞争。
Or someone who eventually asserts themselves in a management role with a team or group.
那么甚至后来呢，他在团队中呢，能够是展现出他的管理的这样的他承担管理的作用。
But in such a case, you would see the 11th house clearly expressed.
但是在这样的，你就可以看到11宫清晰的表达出来。
I have seen this repeatedly. Okay.
我经常的看到这种情境。
Let's see. Next question. Is there a question there? From
同时都是5度。
From Minchen. Okay, so we got that straight. Now let's take this a little further. They said, of course, if both houses are affected, which house will get more influence? I answered that.
刚才就是回答了，如果是2个宫位的影响的话，哪个宫影响的更多一些。
Hold on, let me get this to it. Now, can we say, here's question 2. Can we say that we have to distinguish the houses the lunar nodes fall into because they are special?
是南北焦点特殊，必须分清楚他们所谓的宫位吗？
Or must we distinguish all the planets' houses?
还是所有行星都必须分清楚宫位？
And what did they mean by the new, especially the fact that they retrograde that they're referring to here?
Which one?
This question 2.
They didn't say retrograde.
Okay, all right. According to the different house systems, the houses that one planet falls into may be different. Then which house should be considered the very house the planet falls into? I'm going to read that one.
那么是当分工法不同时，星体落入的宫位不同，以哪个为准呢？
Okay. As all of you know, I use the Koch house system.
大家都知道，我用的是 Koch 宫位制。
The most common house system in the West is the Placidus.
那么在西方呢，最常用的是 Placidus 宫位制。
And what I would suggest is that you experiment with both of those house systems.
我觉得你们可以去这2个宫位，你们都可以做一下实验。
When I first started astrology, for the first 4 years of my study, I used the Placidus house system.
当我开始学占星的时候，在最初的4年，我用的是 Placidus 宫位制。
And then in Virginia Beach, because of the teacher that I had, I switched to the Koch house system.
那么后来在维吉尼亚海滩，因为我的老师他用 Koch 宫位制，所以说我也用 Koch。
I liked the fact that Koch was a triple Virgo.
因为我很喜欢创造 Koch 宫位制的这个人呢，他是一个3倍的处女座。
And that he had spent most of his life on this table of houses.
他把他一辈子都花在这个宫位制上 ，Koch 宫位制上。
And that he had been imprisoned in a concentration camp in Germany in World War II.
他在第2次世界大战的时候呢，他被关在德国的集中营里。
And that all of his tables and books had been burned and destroyed.
他所有的这个宫位表呢都被烧毁了。
And that he continued to work on the formula in his mind as a way to survive the concentration camp.
他就是在脑海里面不断的去就是说这些公式他不断的在运算，这样的话帮助他从那个集中营里活下来。
And when he got out of the camp, he republished his book.
当他从集中营出来的时候呢，他就发表了他的书。
And despite that dramatic story, that doesn't mean he was right.
当然了，虽然他有这么一个戏剧化的故事，并不意味着他必然是成功，他必然是正确的。
But I admired him.
但是我非常的敬仰他。
And my teacher at the time, Vicki Green, in Virginia Beach, was a big supporter of his table of houses.
那我的老师呢 ，Vicki Green 呢，他是他的这个Koch宫位制的支持者。
The joke in America about the Koch houses is that things go better with Koch.
那个在美国关于 Koch 宫位制的一个笑话是，就是说有 Koch 一切都会更好。
It's obviously a little fun there. Okay.
Why?
Because of Coca-Cola.
而且它是 Coke 就跟可口可乐一样哈，它有可乐，一切都会更好。
Okay. This is a good Atlanta joke.
这是亚特兰大的笑话，因为那个可口可乐的本部在亚特兰大。
Yes, we are the infamous city that invented that drink.
他说是我们这个发明了可口可乐的这个臭名昭著的城市。
I apologize for that.
向大家表示道歉。
And for all of you who've had bad teeth because of it.
如果大家牙口不好的话，因为喝可乐牙口不好。
Okay.
向大家表示抱歉。
Okay. But, you know, as a student of astrology, I want you to be an experienced-based astrologer.
那么作为占星学生呢，我希望你们是那种以经验为基础的这样的占星师。
The astrology that I share with you as a teacher is experience-based.
那么我作为老师跟大家分享的占星学是基于我的经验的。
I will tell you when what I'm saying is someone else's opinion.
我也可以告诉你们，如果这些是别人的观点。
And I will suggest to you other experts who know more about certain subjects than I do.
我也会向大家告诉大家，如果是在一个主题上面，他们比我更知道的更多，我也会向大家推荐那些占星师。
But I'm sure that most of you as students are probably smarter than I was when I was a student.
我觉得你们呢学的时候，应该比我做学生的时候呢，你们比我更聪明。
And that you will experiment with these houses.
你们会去拿这些宫位不同的分公式去做一些实验。
And ask questions.
去问问题。
And see what fits the reality you know to be true.
去看一看哪个是符合你们所知道的这种现实。
Now I know what complicates this in China is that birth time is also questionable.
我觉得这个事情让在中国变得复杂的一个原因是，因为大部分人出生时间都是有问题的。
And so then it's, well, how do I know if it's the house that's wrong or the birth time that's wrong?
所以说，那问题就变成，到底是宫位制我用的不对呢，还是说我的出生时间不对呢？
I'm sorry about this.
对此我也感到非常抱歉。
But try it with the Koch house system. See how it works. See how much you have to adjust your birth time. See if it works consistently.
不过呢，你们可以去试试那个扣克宫位制，看看它是否有效，行之有效。那么也是看看你的出生时间到底是准不准。
And what you're going to learn beginning tonight in our study of transits is your first step also towards being able to rectify your chart.
那么今天我们学的这个行性，也是你们开始学习校对自己基础的第一步。
So you're not only learning tonight the most rudimentary forecasting tool, you are also learning a tool or a method that can help you figure out your correct birth time.
所以说，你们今天学的呢，不仅是一个非常基础的预测工具，你们也可以用这个预测工具开始去看看自己的出生时间是否准确。
Okay, do you think I answered those questions? About the houses and so forth. Yeah. All right, so thank you for your questions very much.
谢谢大家的问题。
All right, let's go on and talk about transits.
我们下来讲一讲行性。
I could probably spend 6 months easily, 18 webinars just on transits.
因为就是如果是讲行性的话呢，我们可以讲18次课。这个很容易就能讲过去了，这18次。
We're going to spend some good time on them, and I'm going to teach you how to work with them to learn about them yourself.
所以呢，我还是想教给大家哈，如何是一种方法，你们能够是自己去运用它，自己来学习它。
The basic question, of course, is what are transits exactly?
那么首先最基本的问题是，到底什么是行进？
All a transit is where the sun, moon, and planets happen to be at any given time.
所谓行进，就是太阳、月亮还有这些行星在某一个特定时间，它在黄道上的位置。
Where were the transits when your grandfather fell down a flight of stairs in 1974?
比方说，1974 1974年，当你的祖父从那个楼梯上滚下来的时候，那时候天上的行星都在什么位置？在1974年。
If you know your grandfather's birthday, you might look up the month, day, and year your grandfather was born.
哦，如果是I'm sorry.
If you know your grandfather's birthday, I'm going to explain. Just hang in there with me. If you know your grandfather's birthday, by at least the month, day, year, you may look up the month, day, and year he was born.
那么你如果知道你的祖父的生日日期，那么你看一下，在那个年月日，那个日期他出生。
You may then look up the date that he fell down a flight of stairs in 1974.
那么你再看一下1974年，当他从楼梯上滚落下来的时候的那一天。
You may start looking and saying, what was happening with my grandfather when this happened?
你可能会想，我的祖父出了什么事情？
You may notice that Uranus was making a square to your grandfather's Mars.
你可能注意到当时的天上的1974年那个时刻的天王星和你祖父本命盘上的火星有出现了一个四分相。
You may notice that transiting Mars was triggering this Uranus-Mars transit.
你可能也注意到当时行进的火星，它和这个相位也成了相位，因此触发了这个本命盘的。
And then you'll remember the rest of your grandmother's story.
然后呢，你又记起了你的祖母的一些故事，剩下的故事。
Your grandfather was angry because the neighbor's dog had gotten into the house.
你祖父的故事，当时你的祖父非常生气，因为邻居家的狗闯进了你的家。
And he tried to grab the dog.
他想去抓那只狗。
And the dog knocked him down a flight of stairs.
那么那只狗呢，就把他就是撞到了地上。
And that's why your grandfather walked with a limp.
这就是为什么你的祖父呢，后来他就是变成架着拐杖了。
Now, believe it or not, you can learn things exactly like this by using transits to look at history.
信不信由你，你可以用行进，就像我们这样的运用它，看一看这个历史。
Your history, your friend's history, your boyfriend's history, your family's history.
你的历史，你的男朋友的历史，你的整个家族的历史。
You know, you may look at your boyfriend and say, Jupiter was in his 7th house about 6 years ago. I wonder what was happening with him then.
你可能看你的男朋友的经历说，6年以前木星在他的2宫，我想知道那时候发生了什么。
He never told me about that time.
他从来没有跟我讲过那段时期。
He must have had maybe he had a relationship then.
那么好。
Jupiter was transiting her boyfriend's 7th house.
对，你的那个男朋友是那个时候呢是在7宫哈，他从来没有讲过。那也许那个时候他有一段关系，他没有告诉我。
So you ask him, you say, hey, 2007, I noticed Jupiter was transiting your 7th house.
你可能对他说，2007年我注意到木星是在你的7宫。
He's like, yeah, why?
然后他可能就会有点惊讶，他说是啊，为什么问这个问题啊？
And you say, because were you involved with someone then?
然后你就问他说，那时候你是不是跟谁在一起啊？
Yes.
他可能就承认了，说是的。
Why haven't you ever told me about that?
然后你可能问他，你为什么从来没跟我讲过呢？
Because she broke my heart.
因为你男朋友可能说，因为他伤透了我的心。
This opens up an interesting conversation.
这样就开启了一个非常有趣的谈话。
Transits are very useful.
所以说，行进真的是非常有用啊。
Now, how do you find transits? What are good tools for learning where the planets are at any given time?
所以说，你怎么样找到这些行进呢？怎么知道某一个特定的时期行星在什么位置呢？
You have today a lot more tools available than I did as a student.
那么你们现在呢，有非常多的占星学的工具，比我那时候学习占星学的时候多了。
Now, we had books similar to the books listed here. Let me go back to the books.
当时我们也有像我在这个资料上面所列的这些经历的。
Each one of these books, why this thing is doing this. Each one of these books is called an ephemeris.
那么这些书呢，都叫星历表。
Okay, why is it skipping around like this today? Each one of these books is called an ephemeris. These ephemeri or ephemerides are much better than the ones I had when I started.
但是呢，你们现在有的星历表可比我那时候的星历表好多了。
Okay, the one over here on the left goes from 2000 to 2050.
那么你看左边的蓝皮的，它是从2000年到2050年。
I have it beside me right here.
那么我也有这本书。
I carry it with me on the subway sometimes.
甚至我有时候带着它上地铁。
People stare at it and they go, "What is that?"
人们会盯着这个看，说这到底是什么东西。
Sometimes when I see them staring at it, I open it up and show them this.
如果有人看见他们盯着我的星历表看，我就打开星历表让他们看清楚。
And then they look more confused.
然后他们就看上去更疑惑了。
It's fun to do that.
这么做很有趣。
Okay. Now, there are also ephemeris you can buy that gives you more than 50 years. You can buy one that'll give you 100 years.
那有的星历表呢，它可以给你100年的这种。
Here's one for the 20th century, goes all the way back to the year 1900.
那这个黄色呢是上个世纪的星历表，从1900年到2000年。
And then there's even some ephemeri that will give you a lot more astronomical data.
那么有的星历表呢，它给你更多的这种天文数据。
Later in this course, we will teach you more about the astronomy of the chart.
在我们未来的课程中，我们会教给大家更多的关于星图的它的天文学的知识。
This little ephemeris on the right here, which is only for 13 years, from 2007 to 2020. The reason it's listed for such a short time is because it contains more astronomical data.
那么你看最右边的这个红色的呢，它只有13年的星历。之所以它只包含了13年，是因为里面有更多的数据。
But you don't need to know all that data right now for studying transits, okay?
但是你现在学习行星呢，并不需要知道所有的这些数据。
Okay. Here are some more sample ephemerides.
这还有更多的这样的星历表。
The one on the left is the classic American ephemeris for the 20th century.
左边的这个是经典的美国星历表，就是20世纪的美国星历表。
Okay. And then we have the updated version called the New American ephemeris for the 21st century.
然后呢，中间的这个呢是一个21世纪的星历表。
Now these two ephemerides that are on the left are set up for midnight ET, which is ephemeris time.
那么右边的这两个星历表呢，它上面的时间是午夜时间。
Ephemeris time is the same as Greenwich Mean Time. It's the equivalent of Greenwich Mean Time.
那么它这个时间呢和格林威治时间是一样的。
What this means is that everything listed in this ephemeris for midnight GMT corresponds to 8 o'clock in the morning in Beijing.
我说错了哈，刚才是左边那两个红色的哈，也就是说我们看这个红色的星历表的时候呢，实际上你看到的这个行星的位置是北京时间8点的，因为它正好是格林威治时间世界时的0点。
Okay. You can order these books through Amazon.
你们可以从亚马逊上订购这些书。
Sometimes I will bring used copies in my suitcase.
有时候呢，大卫老师会把那个二手书带过来。
When I come to China, but these suitcases end up weighing 75 pounds.
但是这个让他的那个原来的箱子就太重了。
And I usually have to pay a fine to the airline for these suitcases.
那时候他就得交那个超重的罚金。
They put this big label on my suitcase that says heavy bag.
他们在他的那个箱子上面贴上的标签是重物。
And they make me pay $75.
然后他让他多付了75美元。
For bringing it into China.
把这些书带到中国来。
But I'll keep doing it.
但是他会一直来带一些书过来。
All right. Now, basic question, you can read this material here. But one of the interesting questions is, Do you need an ephemeris?
那么大家可以看这个我们上面列的问题哈，那其中一个问题是我们需要心理表吗？
All right, let's go to that question here, and we'll go back to the other issue. Number one, you need an ephemeris for this course.
首先呢，如果你要上这堂课的话，你就需要一个心理表，
Because we're going to learn about secondary progression.
因为我们要去学二次线。
Now, there is astrological software, a lot of it out there, that you can calculate secondary progressions with. So if you would rather purchase software, you certainly could.
当然了，有很多的占星软件可以来计算这二次线。
Okay?
你如果是想用这个软件来计算二次线的也没问题。
But some of you may say, why should I either buy an ephemeris or buy software? I can just use my mobile or my iPad.
那有人说，我为什么要去买心理表呢？我可以就用我的手机或者是 iPad 来看。
Okay? And it's possible that you could. Here's what a page of an ephemeris looks like.
那么当然你可以这样做。那么不过让大家看一下这个心理表上面是什么样子的。
Okay? This is a page that is from the New American Ephemeris for the 21st century.
这是21世纪的美国心理表。
And you can see that in addition to the planets we'll be focusing on in this course, that it also lists series right here. This is series.
你看看这上面还有古神星哈。
Which,
除了我们在这堂课所学的那些行星之外，这里面还有古神星。
which I have not studied in my practice, so I will refer you to experts on series. Series used to be called an asteroid.
那么这个古神星呢，我不是专家，原来呢它叫做小行星。那么你们可以去找这个关于古神星研究的专家
Okay?
来学习。
And it also lists Chiron, which has been discovered to be a comet.
那么它也傍上了凯龙星，那么凯龙星呢是一颗彗星。
And you can see that this ephemeris is listed for August of 2012.
你看，这是2012年8月份的这个星历。
And like a calendar, it has the days of the week listed on the left.
它就像日历一样，你看在左边呢，它有是大概是星期几，也都列出来。
You can also see that this ephemeris shows, it jumps around terribly. You can also see that this ephemeris shows, if I could just get it to not jump around, let me just try. Please don't jump around. All right. That it shows both the midnight position of the moon and the 12-hour position of the moon.
你看这个星历表上还列出来，午夜时月亮的位置，还有是正午时月亮的位置。
This is because the moon moves fast and it gives you a chance to see where the moon is because it moves so fast.
之所以列出来两个月亮的位置呢，是因为月亮的它的移动是非常快的，所以说可以让大家更清楚的看到月亮在哪里。
The moon's position at midnight will be 8 in the morning in China. The position of the moon at 12 noon will be 8 p.m. in China.
那这个星历表上列出来月亮的位置，第一个月亮的位置呢是早上8点钟北京时间的月亮位置，而第二个月亮位置呢就是晚上8点钟月亮的位置。
This is really a cool thing because you can just look at it. You can tell every night at 8 o'clock where the moon is.
所以说这个非常棒哈，因为是你可以看一下月亮到底在什么地方。那美国8小时你都可以看到。
Or on your way to work in the morning, you can glance at it and say, oh, the midnight position is telling me where the moon is this morning at 8 o'clock.
那你或者是你看你星表知道，这个星表上的午夜的月亮位置是告诉我今天早上8点的月亮位置在哪里。
Okay? The other thing I want you to think about.
买一本就够了。
I want you to think about what are the advantages of looking at an ephemeris.
那么另外一点是，到底是我们看星表它有什么样的益处呢？
Okay? Some of you may think, I just want to click on my iPhone or my iPad.
有人可能说，我就在 iPhone 上按一按就看就行了。
I can tell you right now, any of you, including me, can beat you by doing this.
但是我可以告诉你哈，如果我翻这个星历表这个速度比你们就是按这些软件的速度会快得多。
Okay, and I can look up something for 2015, 2018, 2022, just like that.
比方就像刚才，我可以看2015年、2018年、2020年，很快的这样的迅速查找。
If you were born with the moon at 15 degrees of Capricorn and you want to see how many times is Pluto going to cross that, you can find out quickly just looking in this book.
如果是你的月亮是在星图上是摩羯座15度，你想知道冥王星通过这个地方会通过几次，你可以迅速的拿这个星体表就能做到。
Okay, now you can find out other ways too.
你还可以用其他的方式找到。
I've given you some links here.
我给大家一些
that are really cool. We'll come back to this page.
我给大家一些链接。
Okay. One of these links is to astro.com.
一个是 astro.com 这个公司的链接。
It's a cool website.
这是一个很棒的网站。
One of the best in the world.
这是世界上最棒的占星网站之一。
This link will take you to the Swiss ephemeris.
这个可以让你们看到那个瑞士星历表。
But you won't be able to print it. All you'll be able to do is click it and advance it because it's a PDF. You will only be able to advance it on the screen.
你可以在那个你的屏幕上点击它来看，你没法去打印。
But it's an accurate ephemeris, and you can use that if you want to.
但是它是一个非常准确的星历表，如果你想用的话，你可以用这个。
The coolest site right now, where you can actually go and print your own ephemeris pages if you have a printer or access to a printer in your neighborhood, is go to Cafe Astrology.
另外一个非常棒的星历表是 Cafe Astrology 上面的星历表，这个星历表你们是可以打印出来。
Okay, this link you can go right to 2014 print out pages. You can go to 2015 print out pages, and they look really pretty.
你们可以去打印2014、2015年的星历表，看上去也很漂亮。
If you have a color printer,
如果你们有一个彩打的话，
or you're using a color printer,
或者你们用彩打
whatever, it'll look like this.
你看，就是像这个样子，看上去很漂亮。
Now this is sort of the standard kind of ephemeris that I learned to do.
这是我学会用的那种标准的星历表。
And even though it says time zone EDT on the right, ignore that. All these positions are for tropical midnight. This is a midnight ephemeris.
虽然说它那个上面写了什么 EDT 啊，你们可以忽略不计。所有这些星历表都是在午夜0点的那个星历表，就是说格林威治时间午夜0点。
Okay.
日星历表和美国星历表没有什么差异。
So look at this. We can look at it right now. If we go down, if we scroll down, let's go to, I know we got one blank page here, but let's scroll to November. Here we are, the month we're in now.
你看一看这个页呢，列出了我们现在11月份。
Okay. And right now we are Thursday the 20th.
那现在我们看看20号。
This thing is just driving me crazy tonight. I'm having some kind of Mercury Uranus thing going on. All right. It's doing this. Anyway, there's Thursday the 20th.
你看，这就周四20号。
And you can see the moon at 6 Scorpio there.
你可以看到月亮早上8点钟，月亮在天蝎座6度。
You can check out all these positions all the way across.
你可以看所有的这些月亮的。
You can see.
还有其他行星的位置。
You can see Venus at 4 degrees of Sag.
你可以看到金星呢在射手座4度。
Mars at 18 Capricorn.
火星在摩羯座18度。
And so forth. Just by following the column down. See?
你就看这样一列，你就看到所有的行星的落点。
See how easy that is? You get Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus. That's very easy.
你可以看到很清楚的看到水星、金星、火星、木星等等这些行星的位置，非常清晰。
It's got the true node listed. That's the one I use.
而且它列上了这个焦点呢是真实焦点，这是我所用的焦点。
It's got the midnight moon and the 12-hour moon.
这也是有午夜的月亮，还有是正午12点，那这个都是格林威治时间哈。
It also
换算成说到早上8点是已经换算了，因为人家这是美国星历表。
At the bottom of the page, it also lists other information.
那么在这一页呢，下面呢是列出了其他的一些信息。
And some of these are terms that you will need to know for both the COAC exam and the ESA exam.
那么有些这些术语呢，在我们的这个 COAC 考试和 ESA 考试里面都会考到。
Okay. For example, the term ingress.
比如说进入。
Over here under planetary data.
你看这个在行星数据里面。
What is ingress?
那么进入是什么意思呢？
Ingress means when a planet or the moon moves into a sign.
那么所谓进入，就是说当这个行星新进入某个星座的时候，它的时间，它是哪一天哪个时间进入。
And here we have a list of the day and time
做
that a planet moves into a sign.
你看这个是我们可以看到这个一个行星呢，它换座了。
We also have a list of stations.
我们还列出了停滞。
When a planet will go either direct or retrograde due to the day and the time.
它会告诉你这个行星它要么是正行了，或者是逆行了，还会告诉你正行逆行的那个时间点。
We have the ingress of the moon into a sign.
那么我们还有看到那个月亮换座的这个时间。
And we have the last aspect the moon will make.
我们在这个里面还可以看到月亮在换座之前所形成的最后一个相位。
Which marks the beginning of what astrologers call a void of course moon.
当月亮在这个星座形成最后一个相位之后呢，到进入下一个星座之前，这段时间叫做月亮的空亡。
Now, the theory of a void of course moon is very interesting.
那么月亮空亡的这个理论非常有趣。
The tradition is very much a part of horary astrology.
那么它的传统来自于卜卦占星学。
And the basic meaning of a void of course moon is that in between that time that the moon makes its last major aspect before it enters the next sign, that nothing of any significance or consequence will be done or occur.
就是在月亮空亡期间，也就是月亮在这个星座形成最后的相位，到它进入下一个星座之前，不会有什么重要的事情能够完成。
Well, the problem I have with this theory and this tradition.
但是呢，我对于这样一个传统或者是这样一个理论，我觉得问题是
is one of the degree to which it is applied.
关键是这个是怎么来应用的，多大程度上应用。
For example, babies are born during a void of course moon.
比如说，婴儿在这个月亮空亡时期也会出生。
Are you saying that their life is of no consequence?
那你是说他们的生命是没有不会有任何的结果吗？
And I have seen many things happen during a void of course moon.
我看到很多事情在月亮空亡时期发生了。
That prove to be events of consequence.
说明它是有一些重要性的。
And so I think we have to reconsider what void of course may refer to.
就是说，在月亮空亡期，就是有很多重要的事情发生，所以说我们要看一下，到底是月亮空亡，它到底是指什么？
Yes. It may be a reference to either a thought process.
它可能意味着一个思考的一个过程。
Or an emotional process.
或者一个情感的过程。
In reference
情绪的过程。
In reference to a thought process, perhaps it represents a thought process that has not been fully thought through.
那么就这个思考的过程，它可能意味着这个思考呢没有很完全的彻底的思考清楚。
Therefore, ideas that emerge during the void of course moon may need other considerations that have not been taken into account.
所以说，在月亮空亡时期的这样的一些思考的事情呢，你可能是需要纳入其他你当时没有考虑的一些因素，影响因素。
And therefore, we may apply the same idea to an emotional process.
这样的话呢，我们可以也把这种概念呢，解释到这种情绪的过程中。
Feelings, emotions that emerge during a void of course moon may be important.
就是在一个月亮空亡时期，它产生的情绪，没准可能是非常重要的。
But there may be other emotional considerations that have not been taken into account.
但是可能当时另外的一些情绪的这种状况呢，没有被考虑进去。
So I think we need to use some real life common sense when it comes to the application of void of course moon.
所以说呢，当我们说讲到月亮空亡的这个的时候呢，我们需要用一些我们人生的一些常识来思考问题。
Otherwise, the next time you see Jack Jower, you'll have to say, I'm sorry, you were born during the void of course moon and your life is of no consequence. Therefore, I'm not talking to you.
不然的话，下一次你如果见到杰西·加尔呢，你如果是运用这个月亮空亡的概念的话，你可能就会对他说，哦，抱歉，因为你出生在月亮空亡时间，所以说你的人生一点都不重要，所以我不想跟你讲话。
Okay. Which is just ridiculous.
这个也是很荒唐的。
Now I see that you were discussing things and have come up with some questions. And my partner here has been busily eyeing, with her Gemini rising, eyeing your questions. So what do you see there that looks curious to you? Anything? Or are we going to have some
这个实际上你去用一下你就知道了，确实是，如果是你用这个星表的话，因为你这个一扫就可以看到这个行星在什么地方，每天在什么地方，而且可以来回翻，因为你比方说女王星它过一个相位，它要3年，那么你翻的非常快，到底什么时候就准确开始入相了，什么时候出相了，什么时候成相了等等，你用一下你就了解了，就是不用在这讲，就是它方便呀还是不方便，先用一下。
I can beat any software. And so can you. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have software because the software will be very valuable, obviously, in doing calculations.
当然了，这并不是说大家不要软件哈，当然要软件的。
Okay, now there's something else I want you to do.
另外呢，有一点希望大家去做。
And this is the coolest thing you could possibly do.
那么这个是你能做的最酷的事儿。
This student right here really says it. She says, I'm thinking of keeping a transit diary.
那么这个学生呢，他在说，我想啊，要去记一个行星日志。
She says, these pages right here. Okay. She says, I'm thinking of keeping a transit diary. I could write or draw in a notebook and even make notes in my iPhone notebook. This might be a way I could learn about transits and get a better real life feel for them.
他就说，我想是在一个笔记本上面记这个行星日志，或者在我的 iPhone 的这个记事本上面写这个行星日志，这个可能是我最好的学习行进的方式。我可以有一个真实的生命的体验。
Now I did this.
生命的感受。
I still have old, decaying yellow pages of diaries from the 70s in boxes.
那么大概说他曾经这样写过，他写了很长时间，他现在还有那些已经发黄的，有些发黄的旧的这样的笔记本，有好几盒。
If I can ever get the time to go dig them out of storage, I may bring some of them here.
如果他有时间去他们的家的地下室看一看，没准他还可能把这个带几本到中国来。
Unless they've all crumbled at this point from age.
不过这个笔记本确实太老了。
Okay.
可能都已经。
But what's really cool is you can keep up every day with what goes on in your life.
但是很棒的是，每天你都可以记，今天发生了什么。
With what you, not only with what you encounter, what you experience.
不仅仅是你遇到了什么，你经历了什么。
With your emotions.
还有你可以写下你这一天的情绪。
With your thoughts and your ideas.
你的想法。
Okay. And notice the same time in either your ephemeris or on your iPad or on your phone where the planets are compared to your chart.
然后你注意一下，那么现在就是行进的这个星盘的行星和你的本命盘比较一下，它在什么位置
using transits is what you call comparative analysis.
当你用情境的时候呢，实际上你在做一个比较分析。
This is a kind of science.
这是某种科学。
Comparative analysis means you're making a comparison, and with that comparison, you are analyzing the data.
比较分析是意味着你在做一个比对，然后用这个比对呢，你去分析数据。
Hey, we have a student over here that's accessing her ephemeris. Are you accessing an ephemeris online over there? Ask her. You want to know?
你是在那个什么吗？是在看心理表吗？
No. You're just using Astro Gold, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very slow.
Astro Gold 非常的慢。
Because all you'll get is a chart for that one time.
因为你看到的是那个时刻的一个星图。
If you want to know where the planets are going to be in a year or 6 months, you got to do another chart, and then another chart, and then another chart.
如果你像在未来1年这个行星在什么位置呢？你要去再调出来另外一个星图。
And when you do that, you miss the whole flow of a transit. A transit is about movement.
但是当你这么做的时候呢，那整个行进的这个流动你就没有看到了，因为其实行进的意思是运动。
It's about following the flow and the movement of these planets.
这是你要跟随这些行星的运动。
Okay. All right. So if you'll keep a diary, you will learn astrology fast.
所以说你们如果去记行星日志的话呢，你会更快的学会占星学。
You can learn about the moon sign. You can get think about this. You can get a feel for the planet.
你可以对这个行星你会真正的有感觉。
You'll start to notice when the moon is in Pisces, what the moon in Pisces feels like.
这样的话呢，你就会感觉到，比方说月亮经过的它的感觉。当行星的月亮在双鱼座的时候，你会感觉到，这两边你是什么感觉，你就能更清楚了月亮星座的感觉。
And as you get more sophisticated, you will notice aspects that occur at any given day.
那么当你越来越熟练了之后呢，你就会注意到，就是每天这个行进的这个天上的行星它形成的项目是什么。
I like to call transits the cosmic weather.
我喜欢把行进叫做宇宙天气。
Okay. And also, I'd like to look at how they aspect each other, not only compared to your chart or a friend's chart, but how do the planets aspect each other on a given day?
那么我还喜欢不仅仅是看这个行星跟你的本命星图或者你朋友的本命星图所形成的相位，我也喜欢去看一下在这些行星之间它们自己行星星图上的这个单盘上面的相位。
You could call this the generic cosmic weather.
你可以把它作为是一般的这种宇宙天气。
Okay, because that gives you a feel for something that's affecting everybody.
因为它是会给你一个感觉，你告诉他，因为这天的宇宙天气它会影响所有的这些相位。
Now, you may think that at 8:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning on the subway in Beijing, that every morning everybody is frowning.
那你可能觉得，就是说在每个在那个地铁上那天哈，好像每个人都在皱眉头，都愁眉苦脸。
But I can tell you, some mornings people are frowning more than other mornings.
那么，但是我可以再告诉大家，其实有些天更多的人在皱眉头。
And some mornings, like when I was on the subway not too long ago the other morning, when Mars and Pluto, the day that Mars and Pluto were conjunct in Capricorn and making an opposition to the moon in Cancer.
那么我可以告诉大家，当有一天那个在摩羯座的火星对向了在巨蟹座的月亮那一天。
This is the generic cosmic weather at that moment.
这是那一天的宇宙的这种一般性的天气情况。
Affecting everyone.
那么这个相位它实际上影响了所有人。
in a different way.
它以不同的方式影响着大家。
First off, it's the moon in Cancer,
首先，那天呢，月亮是在巨蟹座，
which is a moody energy.
那个能量呢，是那种非常郁闷的一种能量，就是情绪化的一种能量。
Nobody wants to leave their home in the morning when the moon is in Cancer.
当月亮在巨蟹座的时候呢，没人想在早上离开家。
You know, they want to stay there and sleep all day.
他们希望就待在家里面睡的时间长一些。
But then Mars and Pluto are opposing the moon.
但是在火星合向女王星对冲了这个月亮。
There was not a smile on any face on the subway.
那天呢，在地铁上好像没有一个人笑。
People looked like they were all on the way to a funeral.
地铁上的人看上去都像去参加一个葬礼的感觉一样。
It was so depressing to me, I wrote a poem about it.
我看到这种情况，我都感觉到抑郁了，我还写了一首诗。
I have the moon in the 12th house.
因为我的月亮在12宫。
My way of dealing with being overwhelmed by emotion is to write poetry.
那么我来去应对这种状况的方式就是写首诗。
I'll publish these poems in China one day.
有一天我会把这些诗都发表出来。
But the point is, start to keep up with this. You'll have a lot of fun.
但是我的意思是，你开始记这样的行星日志，你就会觉得你会给生活增加很多的乐趣。
Compare how people look when the moon is in Sagittarius versus the moon in Cancer.
你去对比一下，当月亮在射手座的时候，人们的情绪是什么样的，跟它月亮在巨蟹的时候有什么不同？
Look to see, are more people talking when the moon is in Gemini?
然后你再看一看，当月亮在双子座的时候，是不是有更多的人在聊天，在说话？
Are more people being aggressive, trying to get on the subway when the moon's in Aries?
或者是当月亮在白羊座的时候，人们是不是变得比较的咄咄逼人？就在地铁上。
Now, these are just very simple observations.
这都是非常简单的一些观察。
The more interesting thing to keep track of in terms of the diary is your inner world, your feelings, your mind.
那么更有趣，在这个日历上面是你的内在世界、你的感受、你的思想、你的念头。
You'll be amazed at what comes out of you, depending on the transits.
你会非常的惊讶，就是看看，就是因为情境的不同，你的生活中发生的事情非常的不同。
All right, now let's talk about how to use them.
那么我们来聊一聊怎么来用吧。
All right? Before we go on, are there any questions about what I've talked about so far?
在我们往下讲之前，刚才这些大家有什么问题吗？
No? All right. The kind of questions that normally come up are the kind of questions that the student asks.
那么常常大家会问的问题呢，是这个学生他所问的问题。
And excuse me, I have to get a spoonful of honey.
那位老师现在还要吃一点蜂蜜哈。
I got some organic honey.
这是那个是有机蜂蜜。
I ate all the honey that came from the Himalayas.
他已经吃光了喜马拉雅的山蜂蜜。
It was really high honey.
所以那个真的是非常棒的。
I could hear the monks chanting every time I ate it.
每次他吃那个蜂蜜的时候，他都能听到那个和尚的这种吟诵的声音。
I don't know the bees that made this one.
但是他不认识制造这个蜂蜜的地方。
But it came downstairs from this little organic restaurant.
但是他是从那个我们楼下有一个有机商店来的。
That's very tasty.
行进的星星会影响到每一个人吗？
Okay,
还是跟比看星星相位，它会影响到？
Good
就是
point.
行进的星星，就是那个行进盘上的相位也会影响我们的。它跟我们本命盘形成的相位，本命盘形成的相位也会影响我们。你如果去记录日志的话呢，也都会看到。
Very good. Do you answer the question?
Yes, I answer the question.
Thank you.
当然它肯定程度不一样啊。你比方说，你天上的女王星跟你的 本命盘的火星形成了相位，跟那一天女王星和火星那个对你的影响是不一样的，因为一个是更个人化的，一个是普泛性的影响。
对呀。Okay. All right. So here's the questions we got here. We're going to try and go through all these questions today.
我们希望我们今天呢把这些问题都讲到啊。
Where do we start when we look at transits?
当我们看行星的时候，我们从哪里开始呢？
How long does a transit last?
那么一次行星持续多久？
Don't different planets have different lengths of influence?
就是说，不同的行星是不是影响的时间也会不同？
What is the most important transit in a given period?
在一段特定的时间里，什么行星最重要？
When two or more transits happen at the same time, how do we combine these in the interpretation? For example, Saturn transit and Jupiter transit seem to have an opposite meaning.
另外呢，这个问题就是当同一时间发生两个或多个行星，我们将如何在解读时将它们整合起来呢？比如果是这段时间那个既有土星的行星，也有木星的行星，它们一起是相反的。
Which is more important, transit to a house, transit to a planet?
那哪个更重要？是行星影响一个宫位，还是行星影响一颗行星？
Will the faster moving planet transit matter?
运行较快的行星还重要吗？
How do we interpret a transiting planet in different aspect combinations?
我们如何解读一颗在不同的相位组合中行星的行星呢？
How to interpret transit of houses versus transit of planets?
我们如何解读行星的宫位和行星的行星之间的矛盾？
Do we consider the house or the ruler of the house?
我们要不要考虑宫位和宫位的守护星？
Basically, what is the methodology of interpreting transit?
那么基本来说，就是说，当我们解读行星的时候，我们到底有什么样的心法呢？
All right. This graph that you see here, okay, there, somebody that has another comment there. Is that the question?
星域表上的时间当然要换算成我们当地的时间了。
Is that a question?
不过这个并不是很重要了。
Oh, you're okay. I love this. You're my best teaching assistant so far.
I cannot say so.
I know that. I just did. Well, look, our there's a line missing in this graph. I don't know how. There should be a line between Jupiter and Mars.
这个图上，这个电脑上面没有显示出来木星和火星之间那条线不知道怎么回事。
Okay, now let's look at this graph.
I'm
going to make it smaller so people can see it.
And also another student question. 行星的含义是遵循本命行星的含义的。女王星还是那颗女王星，女王星的意义是不变的。
How come this thing does this? Something's not right here. We'll go with it this way. Okay. There we go.
They can see.
They can?
They can.
Good. Okay. What do these numbers mean across the top?
就是在上面的1、2、3、4、5、6、7这个数字是意味着什么？
This shows you the priority of transiting planets when you're comparing them to the natal chart.
这意味着当你把那个行星的星盘和本命星盘对比较的时候，哪个行星的行星最重要？把它的这是排它的优先顺序。
This is a very systematic, logical process.
这是一个非常系统化的、有逻辑化的一个过程。
The outer planets move faster than the inner planets. The outer planets move faster than the inner planets.
Faster.
The outer planets move slower than the inner planets.
那么外行星它比内行星它的运动速度更慢。
Okay. And you can see that that's what this numbering is based on.
所以说呢，你也会知道这个数字是什么意思了。
Pluto here, I don't know why this thing is starting to break. Pluto here is number 1.
你看，我们把女王星放在第一位。
All right? And you can see the order is very simple. Neptune's the second, Uranus is the third, Saturn's the fourth, the Node is the fifth, etc.
您可以看到，这是按这个它们的运行速度来排列的。运行最慢的行星我们放在第一位。
Okay. And what all this means is when you're looking in your assembly or you're looking at your software, that you start with Pluto.
它就意味着，当你看你的这个，不论是你的星历表还是你的软件的时候，你要从行进的冥王星开始看，就外行进的冥王星。
Because Pluto, by aspects, is going to be the longest term.
因为就冥王星和我们的本命盘行星形成的相位而言呢，它影响本命盘行星的时间是最长的。
And then in your comparison, look at the order of the comparison.
然后呢，你看看，就本命盘行星来说呢，它的重要顺序是在左边这一列的排列。
It's listed very simply. You're going to compare to the ascendant, then the midheaven. This is your natal chart. To the ascendant, the midheaven, meaning the angles, the moon, sun, node, Mercury, Venus, Mars, so forth.
那么左边的顺序呢是先是上升点、中心、月亮、太阳，焦点、南北焦点。
Now you can use this graph. You can print this out if you want.
你可以把这个给打印出来。
And you can use this graph to practice looking at transits.
你可以用这个表呢去来练习行进解读。
And it's set up perfectly. You can mark down what planet is transiting what natal planet in your chart or in a friend's chart.
你可以看是什么样的行星在影响你的本命星盘的行星。
Okay, it's a very simple tool, very easy.
这是非常非常简单的。
Okay, is there a question there? Is there a question? All right, now let's take a look at priorities here. We're going to go down all the questions. If I can, why this thing jumps around so long? Can't get it to stay still. Okay. This first part is self-explanatory.
那么第一部分呢，我们一看就明白了。
We're already talking about this. We're just comparing to the planets.
刚才我们已经讲过了，我们就是把那个行星星盘的行星和本命星盘的行星比较一下。
And like it says, you can see from the graph above, the order of importance is actually reversed that of the transits themselves.
你们是可以看到从我们上面的表格呢，这个重要性和这个行星它们本身那正好是相反的，它的运动性是相反的。
Now let's talk about this issue of transits through the houses.
然后我们来讲一讲，就是行进的行星，它进入宫位，在宫位中的影响。
Transits in houses can last a long time.
那么行星在这个宫位，它们可能会停留非常多的时间。
So these mark long-term phases.
所以说呢，这个它标志着一个很长阶段，这是一个人生的一个很长的生命阶段。
With Uranus, easily stay in a house 7 years or more.
比方说天王星很容易它就在宫位停7年。
Pluto, depending on what sign it's in, can stay in a house anywhere from 13 years to 20 years, depending on the house and the sun.
那冥王星呢，它是基于就是说这个宫位还有星座不同，它可能会在这个地方待13年到20年在一个宫位。
But the inner planets, like Mars, for example, might only stay in a house for 6 or 7 weeks.
但是呢，内行星，比如说火星，它创这个宫位呢，一般是6到7周。
Except when it's retrograde.
但是呢，逆行时候就不是这样了。
And then it might stay in a house for 7 or 8 months.
那个时候，如果逆行，它可能在这个宫位待7到8个月。
And here's a big clue, by the way. Pay attention to transiting Mars. It always shows the area that is hot and full of activity.
对，你们一定要注意行进的火星，它总是指出来，就是说非常让人激动和活跃的一个领域，就是事情多发的领域，因为火星。
We'll talk more about that tonight.
我们今天将会更多的来讲一讲这一点。
All right. trying to get this to work. Let's talk about the orb of transiting aspects.
那么我们再谈一下行星相位的容许度。
Usually we can talk about if Uranus in house, for example, in fifth house for 7 years. The phases of that is that important.
Yeah, I'm going to give that as an example, but I want to go through the rules first. Okay? The orb of 3 degrees applying and 1 degree separating is for all the planets, including the moon, the sun, and the lunar nodes.
那么行星相位的容许度呢，是木相位是3度，书相位是1度，它包括这个所有的行星，太阳、月亮、月亮交点都使用这样一个容许度。
Now, because the outer planets move the slowest,
因为外行星它的行进速度最慢，
Pluto is going to last 2.5 to 3 years by aspect.
所以说如果是行进的美王星跟本命盘的一个行星形成相位的时候呢，这个相位的这个影响会2.5到3年。
Neptune will last almost as long, 2 years, 2.5 years.
那么海王星的影响呢，大概是也差不多，它是2到2.5年。
By aspect, Uranus will last about 1.5 to 2 years.
行星的天王星呢，它相位是持续1.5年到2年。
Saturn, by aspect, may last for a year.
那么土星呢，它的相位持续1年。
And Jupiter will last for several weeks or months, depending upon where it makes its direct or retrograde motion.
那么木星它影响的周是时间呢，是持续数周或者数月，就取决于它是否有顺行逆行的状况。
As I mentioned to you a while ago, direct or retrograde changes are called planetary stations. You need to remember this.
另外呢，刚才大家提到的一个概念就是行星停滞，当它那个顺行或者逆行，对改变方向的时候，它会停滞在那里。
In fact, I want to send this out to everybody. So how do I send it to everybody? It says no door host. Everyone, here we go. A planetary station is sometimes called a standing.
就是说这两个词呢，中文翻译都一样，都叫停滞。Station 和 standing 都是停滞。
You may see this term on the ESAR exam.
We all translate to the same Chinese word.
Standing or station means the same thing? So if someone is standing on your foot, you call it a station on your foot?
It seems to translate the same.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
It's very strange. Okay.
So
Interesting.
the Chinese seems the same.
All right. I like for you to think of a station as someone standing on your foot.
但是在英文中，虽然在中文中我们都叫做了停滞哈，但实际上是在英文里面，这个 standing 的意思呢，它就好像是站立。你就可以想象，如果是有人就是说他踩在你的脚上是什么感觉？
Mm-hmm. You know, the thing is, we had an Aries employee here at No Door.
我们在那个做到呢，我们有一个员工，他是一个白羊座。
And she was asking me about the station of Mars.
他在问我火星的停滞。
She said, I'm trying to get a feel for what that means.
他说我想感觉一下这个火星停滞到底是什么感觉。
So I put my foot on top of her foot while I was talking to her.
所以说呢，当我跟他聊天的时候呢，我就把我的脚踩在他的脚上了。
I thought to myself, she's an Aries, she can take it.
我想他是一个白羊座，所以说他能够承受。
And the more I talked about it, the more I pressed my foot on her foot.
那么我跟他谈的越久呢，我就越用力的把我的脚夹在他的脚上。
Until she finally said, that hurts.
直到最后他说这个很疼。
I said, that's a station.
这就是停滞。
Where you feel the pressure the most.
就是说在那个时刻，你就是最能感觉到那个压力。
So when you're using your ephemeris, or whatever tool you're using, you want to notice where a planet is going to go retrograde or direct.
所以说，当你去看你的星运表上，你一定要看这个什么时候这个行星要逆行了，或者行星要正行了，那个时候他们就会出现一个这样长时间一个时间的停滞。
If you were born with Venus at 12 degrees of Aries, you're going to notice that Uranus is making a station in December at 12 degrees of Aries.
那么如果是你的出生星图上，你的金星在白羊座12度，你也会注意到，在12月份的时候，天上的天王星会在12度，白羊座12度停滞。
you need to memorize these planetary stations.
你一定要记下来所有的行星停滞的这个。
If you want to be a good forecaster, you need to memorize the next 3 years of stations.
如果你想是一个很好的占星师，能做预测的话，你要记得未来3年这个所有的行星停滞的这个位置。
So you know automatically where they're going to be.
那这样的话，你就会自动会知道他们会在哪里。
I know an astrologer named Monica Dimino who was here, as some of you know, with eStar recently.
那么我认识一位占星师，他是 Monica Dimino， 他是今年也是来我们这边做伊萨咨询技巧培训的老师。
She has looked at an ephemeris for more than 50 years.
他看这星历表看了50年。
And she has memorized them.
他把这些都记在他的头脑里。
I tested her on this.
然后有一天我就测试了他一下。
I said, "Tell me where Chiron was in 1932 in May."
我问他，你告诉我1932年5月海龙星在什么位置？
She spit it right out.
他立刻就告诉我了。
I said, "Tell me where Pluto was in October 1953."
我问他，在1953年10月份冥王星在哪里？
She spit it right out.
他立刻也就告诉我了。
Okay? You can do this too.
你们也能做到。
And the way you start doing this is by learning planetary stations.
那么你们能做的它的一个方式就是要记得这个行星停滞。
Because then you're only having to remember 1 degree.
因为这样的话呢，也就是只需要记1度了。
All of us know right now that Jupiter is in Leo, don't we?
我们所有人都知道，现在木星在狮子座里面。
All you Leos are out there going, "I feel great. I feel greater than normal. I'm so great."
那所有的这个狮子座的人可能说我现在感觉棒极了，我感觉真棒啊！我从来没感觉到这么棒过。
Unless you're getting a square from Saturn and you're just feeling the Jupiter, and you're like, "Oh, I'm so wonderful."
除非是你可能你的这个被土星，你这个太阳被土星行了影响啊，你可能就感觉没那么强烈了，不然的话你就感觉自己棒极了。
You're a happy Leo right now.
你们这些狮子座现在是快乐的狮子座。
We're all happy for you.
我们也为你们感到高兴。
Okay? Now, here's the thing. Where will Jupiter make its station?
那么木星会在什么时候停滞呢？
Okay? Between 12 and 22 degrees of Leo.
在狮子座22度。
Okay? This means if you were born with the sun at 22 degrees of Leo,
这就意味着，如果是你是太阳是在狮子座22度的话，
you're getting this Jupiter transit right on your sun. You're going to feel it.
这个木星的行进就正在你的太阳上，你会感受到的。
Okay?
就在今年的12月哈。
And it's probably going to feel extra good to you.
你可能感觉到超好。
Because you've had a whole year with Saturn squaring your sun already.
因为你过去1年这个土星一直在吸引你的太阳。
So you're like smiling, going, "Oh, I'm feeling pretty good now."
那么你现在会感觉到，哎呀，我现在感觉真好。
I've worked hard over the last year. I deserve to reward myself. I'm going to go out and buy something.
我去年工作的非常的辛苦。我应该去犒劳我一下，我要出去给我自己买点东西。
Suppose your midheaven is 12 degrees of Leo.
假设你的中天是狮子座22度。
And you're thinking about looking for a better job.
你在想，我要找一个好工作。
And you think, when should I do that?
你会想，我应该什么时候去找呢？
And then you say, oh, wait a minute, Jupiter is going to make a station at 12 degrees of Leo next year.
你会想，12 degree, OK.
12.
你会想一想，那么木星在明年4月份那个时候呢，它会停滞，在狮子座12度。
Right. So then you think, okay, I'm going to get Jupiter stationary on my midheaven in the spring.
你会想，在春天的时候，这个木星会停滞在我的中间。
And it might even, even though it's exact in April, it might be there for several months.
虽然说在那个4月份的时候是准确的在那个度数，但实际上呢，它会在这个度数停几个月。
Get your CV or your resume all spruced up.
所以说你要把你的那个简历好好的准备好。
And go looking.
你要去找吧，赶快去找。
And doesn't guarantee you're going to get a better job.
这并不是能够保证你一定会得到一个更好的工作。
There are no guarantees.
没有什么保证哈，世界上没有保证。
It just means that if you're mid-heaven 12 degrees of Leo, your chances are better that you might be able to find a better position.
它只不过意味着，如果是你的中间是在这个位置的话呢，你的机会会更好一些，你可能能够得到一个更好的位置。
Look at this. So great. My moon is 12 Leo and sun is 17 Leo. Okay, great. This is good.
这位同学他是中奖了哈。
This means next year you will sign up for all of Nodor's events.
就是你的这位同学的月亮在狮子座12度，太阳在狮子座17度。戴维老师说，这意味着你明年又到所有的课程你都会参加了哈。
And we will all be happy to see your smiling face.
我们会很高兴的看到你的笑脸。
Great. Okay. All right.
Someone asked.
Okay.
Whether because with the retrograde and the station, we all have the station. Retrograde and direct will the two have the same meaning?
Yeah, pretty much.
有位同学问，就是说，因为他逆行时候停滞一次，顺时候又停滞一次，两次停滞是不是意思都一样的？他说差不多。
There's a lot of debate about this.
对此就是也有一些争论。
You know, astrologers will say that when a planet is retrograding in a natal chart, that the energy tends to be more internalized in the person than externalized.
比方那个占星师说，如果是在那个出生盘上这颗行星逆行的话呢，那么这个行星能量更多的内化了，而不是外化了。
And I think there's some truth to this in the natal chart.
我觉得在本命盘上呢，这种说法是有一些道理的。
But with the transits, I haven't noticed a whole lot of difference.
但是如果是在行进盘上呢，我没有看到太多的差异。
I don't see the retrograde Jupiter as the Leo stops whistling and smiling.
我没有看到，比方说在木星运行的时候呢，这个狮座的人就不再笑了。
Because now they're internalizing it.
就并不是说他们现在把木星的这种效果都内化。
I don't see it that way.
我没有看到这样的效应。
If I'm observing the behavior of people for the last 4 years.
就是从我过去这么多年对人的行为的观察来看。
But common sense will tell you that if you have a transiting planet that crisscrosses something in your natal chart 3 times, you're going to learn more from it.
但是呢，我们用常识也会知道，如果一颗行星在你的本命盘的某颗行星上来来回回3次的话，你肯定会从这个经历中学到更多的东西。
Jupiter transiting the planet Venus in your chart 3 times is much more significant than Jupiter transiting your Venus 1 time.
木星如果是它跟你的金星形成3次的相位，比它跟你的金星只形成1次相位呢，那你会更明显的能够感受到。
Because you're getting more chances of expanding your social life or attracting abundance or whatever it might be.
因为你会有更多的这样的机会，能够扩张你的社交生活，或者是吸引到更好的机会，不论是什么。
Okay, what are some other ones? This is great.
下面这个问题会谈到的，因为在我们后面不是也谈到了吗？就是关于行进行星过星体的话，会不会影响那个行进行星所掌握的功能？后面会谈到的。
Okay. What is that? Is that a question or just
The question that you will answer later is the question.
Okay, tell him I will answer that later.
Yeah.
Did you tell him I would?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Some students want to do the metaphor of Jupiter station.
Oh, we're going to do that. Oh, you want me to give a metaphor now?
Yes.
Okay, let me think about it. A metaphor for a Jupiter station.
有同学问，就是木星停滞的这种感觉是什么？哈，要打个比喻。
God, I can think of 1,000 of them. I'm trying to pick the best one. So, let's say could be anything, you know, it could be. Let's say that you were born with Venus. You were born with Venus in the 6th house.
比如说，你出生的时候，金星在第6宫。
And it's trine your midheaven.
那么这颗金星呢，它和你的中天形成3分相。
Okay. And let's say that Jupiter is transiting your Venus in the 6th house.
我们说这时候呢，木星是在你的6宫在运行，而且它合向你的金星。
Okay. And you're at work. You're at work. It's the 6th house. You're at work. You're on the job.
你现在呢，你是有工作。
And you're leaving work kind of late.
那么你那个就是下班时间比较晚。
And you notice some money laying on the floor.
你看到那个地板上呢就掉了钱。
And you don't know where this money came from.
你不知道这钱是来自于哪儿的。
You know, you pick it up and you count.
你把这个钱捡起来数了数。
And let's say it's 10,000 yuan.
那么我们说它是1万元吧。
Right? And you think, what do I do?
你想，我拿这钱怎么办呢？
Somebody's lost this money.
有人把这个钱给丢了。
So you do the right thing.
所以说呢，你做了正确的事情。
You come in, you know, the next day since there's nobody there, and you go to the lost and found of your company. You say somebody has lost $10,000.
你把这个钱交给了公司的事务管理处，说，有人丢了1万块钱。
I don't know who. I found this on the floor last night.
我不知道谁丢的，我昨天晚上在办公室地板上捡到了它。
This is more of a story than a metaphor.
Yes.
I prefer stories to metaphors.
那么这个有点像个故事了，还不是个比喻了。
Okay, I'll think of a metaphor in a minute. And what happens is the boss of the company hears that you have done this.
那么后来发生什么了呢？是这个公司的老板听到了你的这个事迹。
And says, what do you know? I got an honest person working for me.
这个老板会想，哇，这有一个诚实的人，他为我工作。
So they pull up your file and they look at your job history and your record and how long you've been with the company.
然后他们就把你的这个档案拿出来，他看看你的在工作了多长时间呀，你的工作历史啊，等等等等，你的工作记录啊。
You know, and they see that you've had a good performance evaluation.
他们发现你的这个绩效也不错。
And so they call you into the office and they give you a promotion.
那么他们就把你叫进了办公室，给你升职了。
And a raise.
然后还给你加薪。
Okay, this is similar to something that happened to one of my clients. It was a different amount of money and it was in a different currency years ago.
那么这个事情呢，是我的一个客户他发生的事情，他身上发生的事情。这是几年前。
Honesty pays off.
就是说，诚实给我们带来了酬。
This is Jupiter. Honesty rewards.
这是木星，也就是说我们的这种诚实，给我们带来了酬劳。
It was a job situation. Jupiter transiting the 6th house.
因为这是在6宫，所以说是在工作的一个领域。
Money was found. It's Venus in the 6th.
金星就是在6宫，是我们在人工作场合捡到了钱。
Jupiter is triggering the trine in the natal chart between Venus and the midheavens, so Jupiter is trine the midheavens.
这个木星呢，它实际上它当合向金星的时候呢，它也触发了金星和中天的这个3星相，也就是木星和中天也形成了相位。
And among other things, the midheaven is your boss.
那么就是说中天的其中的一个意义就是你的老板。
老板。So this is an example.
这就是一个例子。
Jupiter is a little bit like Santa Claus.
木星有一点点像圣诞老人。
Okay, in a good way. What's it?
是一个比较好的圣诞老人。Someone asked whether when they say that Uranus in your houses for 7 years, you mean a house of fun?
Both, but in this case, I'm talking about a house. The house is almost usually the same number of degrees. It'll vary. Sometimes it could be 7 years, it could be 9 years. It depends on the number of degrees of the house. It could be 10 years.
这个前面有一个问题哈，说到是当时老师说，比方说
一个行星在一个宫位，比方说天王星呢基本上是7年，然后冥王星呢13年到25年，到底是讲是宫位呢还是星座？它其实是这既是宫位又是星座，因为它是个平均的，因为大概是宫位，它就是说虽然说它偏差一点点，但是它这个差不多的这个。
As we know, not all houses are 30 degrees. They can be 20 degrees, they can be 28 degrees, they can be 45 degrees.
因为我们也知道呢，这个确实是宫位大小不一样，有的时候是比方25度，有这个宫位涵盖25度，有时候涵盖45度。
Unless you use equal house system.
除非你用小公式。
Okay, all right. So now let's talk about how do you organize these transits so that you can come up with a forecast based upon transits, because transits are your primary forecasting tool.
那我们下面再看一看如何组织这个行进一定要记得行进是你最首要的预测工具。
Okay, Pluto transits.
比方说我们先来讲冥王星的行进。
You're always going to look at first.
那么这是你一开始就要去看的。
Pluto transits always imply fundamental changes are underway in a person's life.
冥王星行进呢，它预示着个人生活正在进行彻底的改变。
What do people always say to parents before they have their first child?
人们在有他第一个孩子之前，他们常常对自己的父母说什么呢？
They say your life will never be the same again.
他们会说，你的生命再也不会像原来一样了。
This is like a Pluto transit.
这就是一个冥王星的行进。
Your life will never be the same again.
就是说，在你生孩子之前人们常常会说，你要生孩子，别人说你生了孩子以后，你的生命再也不会像以前一样。
And Pluto transits often mark rites of passage in one's life.
冥王星的行进常常是标志着一个人生的里程碑。
Such as the birth of children to you or within the family. You might have a cousin that gives birth. Now you got a nephew or a niece.
就比如说你自己
or a second cousin.
你自己有了个孩子，或者是你的家族里面有一个人，比方你的表弟表亲他们有了一个孩子。
Yeah.
他们把一个孩子带进了这个家庭。
Pluto is about family DNA being passed on.
冥王星代表着家族的 DNA， 家族传递下去的 DNA。
There can be family crisis or family breakthroughs, either one.
它可能会发生家庭危机，或者是家庭的一种突破。
What's a family breakthrough?
那么我说的家庭的这个突破是指什么呢？
I haven't talked to my mother in 8 years.
比如说我有8年都没跟我妈说过话。
We started talking.
我们现在开始说话了。
This is a breakthrough.
这也是一个突破。
Okay, this can occur during Pluto.
这个也可能会在冥王星行进的过程中发生这样的事。
Yes, the loss of family members is possible during a Pluto trend.
当冥王星行进的时候呢，有可能失去一位家族的成员，这也是可能的。
Grandparents, uncles, aunts, anybody in the family can die.
比方说你的祖父还有你的叔父就是任何的一个家族成员，他们可能会死去。
I had a 7-year-old boy under a Pluto transit witness the death of his family pet, the dog, being run over by a car when he was 7 years old.
那我有一个客户呢，他这个7岁的时候呢，他有这个冥王星行进的时候，他目睹了他的那个宠物狗被那个车压死。
This is a traumatic event for the 7-year-old boy.
对于这样一个7岁男孩来说，这是一个创伤性的事件。
Under a Pluto transit.
在冥王星的行进之下。
So personal crisis
有可能发生个人的危机。
or personal breakthroughs are likewise.
同时呢，也可能发生一个个人的突破。
Or both.
或者是两个都发生。
In fact, I think of all the planets, Pluto can help you on a deep personal growth level if you work with the energy more than any other planet.
我想一下这个所有的行星的话我觉得如果是你真的是致力于个人成长的话，冥王星对你的这种深层的这个成长的帮助是最大最深的一个帮助。
When I say that Pluto is about gaining empowerment through confronting fears and power struggles with others.
今天我们也讲到了 女王星它意味着你应该去面对自己的恐惧，从而获得力量，或者是可能和别人发生争斗，权力争斗。
This is not an easy thing.
这不是容易的事情，这都不容易。
Confronting fears, it sounds like an easy thing to write, doesn't it?
我们面对恐惧，听上去不像是一件容易的事，对吧？
It's the hardest thing to do.
这真的是世界上最难的事情。
Control battles are typical.
那么这种控制权的争斗，这个是常见的。
But here's what Pluto asks you, in a way, if I can personify Pluto a little bit.
那么如果是我把女王星人格化一下哈，那么我来表演一下，女王星她其实在问你这个问题。
Because Pluto's not really doing anything to you.
因为实际上女王星并没有是她对你做了什么。
Pluto is just reflecting or resonating your Pluto issues.
这个天上行进的女王星，它只不过是反射出你个人的女王星的议题。
And what are your Pluto issues?
而你的个人的女王星的议题又是什么？它反映出来了。
How much power do you want in your life?
比如说，在你的人生中，你到底想要多少权利，多少力量？
Power sounds very seductive to some people.
权利对于很多人来说，听上去都很有诱惑力。
Which is why most of the CEOs of major corporations in China are either Scorpios or have some Pluto conjunction.
这是为什么在中国很多的这种 CEO 他们要么是太阳天蝎座的人，或者他们有一个太阳的一个合相。
Because they want power.
因为他们想要权力。
So when you are having a Pluto transit, in a way, you can personify Pluto as asking you, how much power do you want?
所以说，如果是你有一个女王星行进的话呢，你可以是拟人化一下，就像女王星在问你，你到底想要多少权利？
And what are you willing to do to obtain that power?
就是为了获得这样的权利，你愿意去做什么？
Okay. But Pluto is also about something more, even more profound than that.
但是女王星呢，它还代表着比这更深刻的这样的事情。
It is about the experience of empowerment.
它其实是关于我们要给自己复利。
Empowerment means that you have really confronted and gotten to the bottom of the most negative things, the most destructive things in your mind and in your emotions.
所谓复利，就是说你必须去面对你的情绪，还有你的思维中最具有毁灭性的那些东西。
You have discovered the source of problems in your life.
你发现了你生命中问题的根源所在。
Things that have been an issue for you forever.
那么这个问题好像是一直以来都是你的一个议题。
Now you have a chance to transform whatever that is.
现在你有一个机会去改变那一点了，无论是什么。
And this can happen anywhere in your life.
这个可能是在你生命中的各个领域都有。
Depending on the transit, it can be your, obviously, career, relationships, family.
这个是取决于我们的这个行进有可能是家庭，有可能是事业，有可能是各个方面。
And this is what I mean by things will never be the same again.
这就是我说，当女王星行进的时候，一切都会不一样了。
Now I will have somebody say to me, well, because I've had people say this to me over the years. Well, I went through, or my dad went through a Pluto transit for 3 years and nothing changed.
那么在美国有人问我我的父亲他经历了过去3年经历了女王星行运，但是什么都没改变的。
He didn't do anything different.
他没有做任何不同的事情。
However, right now, he's found out he's got cancer.
但是呢，现在他发现他得了癌症了。
And he's having to get chemotherapy.
他必须去做化疗。
Okay. Maybe he had a chance to confront something destructive in himself.
也许这就是一个机会，他要去面对他内在的一些毁灭性的因素。
Something that would purge that emotional toxicity from his system.
就是这个事情呢，要把那些他情绪上面的那些毒素给清除掉，
But he
给
did.
净化掉。
But he did.
但是呢，他在过去3年他没有去做。
And the way it manifested in his body was his cancer,
那最终呢，在他的身体上表现出来的就是癌症。
which killed him.
那么这个癌症最后让他死亡。
Now we're all going to die of something.
我们每个人有一天都会死。
You can look at statistics to see what that might be.
你可以看一下那个统计学哈，就是说这个到底死亡率有多高。
But I see, if you believe in reincarnation, like I do, you don't have to. I see a Pluto transit as an opportunity to so fundamentally change something that I won't have to deal with it the same way again in my next life.
那么如果是你们相信转世轮回，如果像我这样相信一样哈，我认为一个冥王星的一个行进会让你是彻底的转化一个事情，这样的话，这个同样的议题在你下一辈子就不用去再面对了，就不用去。
Now I could do a workshop just on Pluto, nothing else.
我可以就冥王星做一个工作坊。
We got to move through these tonight. We'll know the things.
不过我们要往下讲哈，虽然冥王星的行进它可以有很多的内容要
I
讲
would love to do a workshop just on Pluto.
我也很想做一个专门的冥王星的行进的工作坊。不过我们往下讲吧。
We'd all be transformed by the end.
我们把这个讲完了，大家可能也都转化了。
Yeah, and then we need a vacation.
然后我们可能就需要请假。
Neptune transits tend to be associated with complex situations that require a sensitive response.
那么海王星的行进常常与需要更敏感回应的复杂局面相关。
Oftentimes, a person becomes more sensitive and impressionable at this point in their life.
那人们呢，常常在这个时间呢，在他的生命经验中变得更加敏感，而且更容易受到影响。
Dreams and imagination become more vivid.
梦想和想象力变得更为生动。
Okay? This could be the most inspired time in your life.
这可能是在你的人生中最灵感迸发的时期。
If you or your client is a spiritually inclined person, they may become more spiritual and even have mystical experiences under a Neptune transit.
如果你的客户呢或者是你是一个非常灵性导向的人，在一个海王星的行进下呢，你可能会变得更为灵性，或者是甚至会有一些神秘性的体验。
I was born, as many of you know, with the moon in the 12th house in Sagittarius.
那么大卫老师的出生图上，月亮在12宫，在射手座。
When Neptune transited my moon, I was living in a spiritual commune at the beach and had a mystical experience.
那么当海王星当时在他的合向他的月亮的时候呢，那时候他是在一个灵性的社区，而且这个灵性的社区呢是在维多利亚海滩，而且他有了一些神秘性的体验。
It was the most profound spiritual experience of my life.
那个是他一生中最深刻的灵性体验。
Okay? But listen to the symbolism.
但是你听一听我刚才这句话里面的那些象征。
I'm living with a spiritual commune.
我和一个灵性的这个社团，就是灵性的社区，我住在那里。
The moon is where you live.
月亮因为是我们所住的地方。
It's your home.
这是你的家。
Okay? Neptune is about spiritual life, spiritual association.
那么海王星呢是灵性的生活，跟灵性相关的东西。
I'm born with the moon in the 12th house, so I have more of a Neptune orientation.
因为他的大卫老师的月亮在12宫，所以说呢，他更有一个灵性导向的这种倾向。
I'm living right next to the ocean.
然后那个灵性社区呢就在海边，
That's Neptune.
这也是海王星。
And I have a powerful mystical experience.
而且他经验一个非常有力的，而且非常神秘的一种经验。
This is the way it works, people.
这就是这种行进他们运作的方式。
Okay. The urge to escape from the world is common with this transit.
这个行进的时候，常常让人有逃离世界的冲动。
The problems of the everyday world may seem too overwhelming.
那么这个日常生活的这个世界看起来就越来越变得非常难以承受。
Healthy escape can include almost anything, visits to ashrams or temples or spiritual practices, anything like this.
那么比较有益的逃避方式呢，可能是你去拜访或者修行，去拜访一些修行的地方，庙宇啊等等。
But as we also know, there's unhealthy escape.
但是我们也知道哈，也有那种不健康的逃避方式。
If you notice that you're starting to drink more wine or drink more whiskey or do drugs, this is a bad sign.
如果你发现你更多的去抽烟喝酒，那么这个就是一个糟糕的信号了。
This is an unhealthy response to a Neptune transit.
这对于海王星的行星来说是一个不健康的一个征象。
There's all kinds of addictions.
就是各种各样的成瘾，各种各样的上瘾。
You may develop a food addiction.
没准你是食物上瘾。
Or your life may become dysfunctional in some way.
或者是你的生活一切都失调了。
You begin to neglect things and avoid things.
你想去逃避，想去忽视一些东西。
You may become so disillusioned with life that you begin to hide from the world.
你可能感觉到非常的幻灭，你想从世界就想躲起来，躲藏起来。
Okay. This disillusionment is a cycle.
那么这样一个幻灭感呢，它实际上是一个周期。
It's normal for a person under a Neptune transit to feel disillusioned at first.
那么对于这有一个海王星被海王星行影响的人呢，他刚开始的时候常常会感觉到幻灭。
Hundreds of times I've heard clients say to me under a Neptune transit, my life is not as I imagined it would be.
那么我的客户有几百次这样，当他们有海王星行进的时候，他们对我说，我的生活跟我想象的完全不同。
Imagined. See, this is Neptune.
你想想，这是想象力的词，这是海王星的词汇。
They are disappointed.
现在非常的失望。
Their life does not match the image.
就我们的生活跟我们想象的生活完全的不符合。
It doesn't fit the dream.
好像是这个跟我的梦想一点不一样。
They are disillusioned.
他们感觉到非常的幻灭。
And you got to help them go through that.
你要帮助他们经历这一切。
So that they can eventually have a new vision of their life.
这样的话呢，他们最终会对他们的人生有一个新的他们一个新的图景。
We're going to talk in this course about how to do that someday.
这个我们也会在这个课程中讲到。
Okay. Any questions come up so far before I get on to Uranus here?
我们刚才这里面所讲的情境呢，是指所有的相位，就是主要的托勒密相位。上完经过终点的时候，也是因为其实你就是把一样的，但是我们这个课里面我们并不讲终点。Some people ask whether they are transiting the midpoint.
Sure, but it's so far down the list, I wouldn't worry about it at this point.
就是说，因为那个终点，大卫老师认为这是在那个优先次序之下，就是我们排的这么多行星的优先次序，他们是更重要的。
Right.
现在我们先不考虑。
Right now, just learn the priorities that I'm teaching.
现在大家是先要学会，就是大卫老师教给大家的这些优先次序。
You can add to this later as you become more sophisticated.
当你们就更加的纯熟以后呢，你可以把更多的元素加入其中。
Midpoints are not more significant than transits to planets.
这个终点不如行星，就是说，就是行星对本命盘行星的这种相位比终点重要。
Uranus transits are surprises.
天王星的这种行径是让你吃惊、惊讶。
These are things that shock you.
这是让你震惊的。
Turn your life upside down, inside out.
把你的人生从上到下、从里到外翻了个个。
You become restless and you begin to do crazy shit.
你就会非常的不安分，然后就想做一些 疯狂的事情。
Right. You become restless, impulsive, rebellious.
你会变得非常的不安分，然后非常的冲动，而且非常的反叛。
You begin to act like you have never acted before.
你的行为好像跟你以前的行为完全不同。
People under Uranus transit sometimes apologize.
有时候人们在天王星行进下的人呢，他们会常常向别人道歉。
They will say, I'm not usually this way.
他们说我以前不是这个样子。
This is not normal for me.
这对我来说就是也不是常见的，不正常。
I don't know what's gotten into me.
我也不知道我到底出什么事儿了。
I see that all the time under Uranus transit.
在天王星行进的时候，我常常发现这样的事，就是出现这样的事情。
Your ability to tolerate the status quo is almost non-existent under
好像你能够忍受现状的那种能力就不再存在了。
And you will become much more experimental in your life.
你在人生中你更愿意去做实验。
Now, sometimes this can lead to a healthy reinvention of your life.
有的时候呢，这可能会让你的生活，你可以做一个新的一个创造。
Or are they listing a place you can buy membership?
Yes.
Or is it about something
Yes,
else?
yes.
Great, okay. But there's a fine line between reinventing your life and becoming too reckless.
但是呢，在重新创造你的生活，或者是太冒险之间、太鲁莽之间，它其实是有一条微妙的线的。
We all know that the chaos of the Uranus transit can mark a period of significant instability in your life.
我们知道这个在天王星的行进下，它带来这种混乱，可能会给你带来一个非常不稳定的一个生命阶段。
However, a Uranian transit can mark an accelerated learning process.
不过一个天王星的行进呢，也是一个加速的学习过程的一个标志。
A lot of people start to study astrology under a Uranus transit.
很多人在天王星行进的时候开始学习占星了。
When Uranus was in Libra, thousands of years ago, when I was starting to study astrology and made a conjunction of my Mercury, that's when I started studying.
那么，在很多年前，当那个天王星在天秤座合向大卫老师水星的时候，那是他刚开始学占星学的时候。
And so a Uranian transit can liberate you from the past and allow you to reinvent your life.
那么所以说，这个天王星的行进呢，可以把你从过去中解放，然后让你更自由。
Unlike a Pluto trend, Uranus may mean some of the things you don't do anymore. In other words, you'll experiment, but you won't keep doing it.
不过呢，女王星的行进呢和天王星的行进跟母王星的行进不一样哈。就是在天王星行进期间，你可能做了一些新鲜的事儿，但是这个事儿完了以后呢，你可能这个事儿你也不再做了，它更多是一种实验的时期。
But some of the improvements that you make, especially new things that you learn are better, can become part of your new life after the trend is over.
但是呢，有的事情你在这一段天王星行进期做的一些新的尝试呢，有可能它会变成你生命的一部分。你这以后你都会在他生命中带着这一些。
Someone here had an example of this.
Yes, when Uranus prime person's moon, Ling moon.
Ling, yeah.
She studied astrology.
Great, it's a good example.
这是一个好的例子。
Hi, Ling. Yes. All right. Saturn transits.
那么下面我们讲土星的行进。
土星. All right. People in the past, used to get apprehensive. Well, there's a bit of Saturn transit coming out.
过去呢，人们常常害怕土星的行进。
It's not a big deal, people.
其实没那么大事儿，没什么大事儿。
A Saturn transit is just a measure of how well you or someone else can handle responsibility.
土星的行进，它其实量度一个人对责任的担当。
And a measure of how workable or realistic your plan really is.
它也在量度你的计划的可行性。
Okay. Saturn also is a test of your commitment.
土星其实也在去测试试炼你的承诺有多强。
Sometimes under a Saturn transit, the work might be a little harder.
那么有时候在土星的行进下，这个工作变得更加艰难。
It might take more time or effort to achieve your goals.
你需要花入更多的时间、更多的努力去才能达到你的目标。
Okay. And frustrations emerge.
而且那个挫折也会出现。
And you may have to learn more efficient, effective ways of managing your time.
你可能要学习一些更有效的、更高效的管理你的时间的这样一些技能。
Okay? There are very healthy ways of responding to Saturn transit.
应对土星的行进呢，有一些非常健康的一个方式。
Just in the last 3 weeks, I've had clients tell me stories about healthy responses to their Saturn transit.
在过去3个星期呢，我就有客户，他们告诉我他们怎么样他们是怎么样应对土星的行进的，而且这是非常健康的方式。
One person went on a diet and lost weight.
那有一个客户呢，他开始节食，然后呢体重减轻了。
Saturn transit to her sun.
那时候是土星和他的太阳形成了相位。
And improved her health.
然后他也因此他的健康得到了改善。
Another client had a Saturn transit to Venus.
那另外一个客户呢，土星和他的金星形成了相位。
She got out of high-risk investments and moved into conservative, low-risk investments.
他撤出了他的高风险的投资，然后把他的钱呢投入到更保险的这样的投资中去了。
And save money in the process.
在这个过程中，他还省了钱。
Okay. Another client began to spend more time with her partner.
那另外一个客户呢，开始和他的伴侣呢，更多的时间待在一起。
Saturn was transiting her descendant.
当时土星是合向了他的下降点。
And she made improvements in their time together.
那么在他们的共同度过的时间呢，他也有了一些改善。
These were stories just recently related to me by some of my American clients who've been with me for a long time.
这是我的一些美国的客户，他们是我的一些长期客户。
Now, they were demonstrating a healthy response to Saturn because they have learned how to work with Saturn.
他们已经学会了一个更健康的一个应对土星的方式，因为他们已经学会了如何和土星一起工作的这样一个。
And we had discussed these trends well in advance of when they were going to occur.
而且呢，我们是在这个行进开始之前很久，我们已经开始谈论这件事情了。
Your clients will not always listen to you.
当然，你的客户不是他们每次都会听你的建议。
But after a while, they learn to.
不过呢，如果是你跟他们就是工作一段时间呢，他们也就会慢慢的学习。
And if you end up doing this as long as I have, this is the kind of feedback you'll be getting from your clients.
如果是你最后呢，你做一个占星师，就像我做这么多年以后呢，到我这么大年龄呢，你就会开始得到这些正向的这些回应了。就是说，当这些土星的这种行运开始的时候呢，他们怎么样正向的健康应对的。
You are a Saturn-friendly person if you are good at managing your time.
如果是你善于管理你的时间呢，你就是一个对土星友好的人。
If you know what your realistic limits are.
如果你知道你的现实的你的那个限度在哪里啊？你的很现实的你的限度是在什么地方呢？
And if you have a good sense of duty, obligation and responsibility.
如果是你对于责任啊、义务啊，你有一个很好的能够很好的承担。
Then you're a Saturn-friendly person.
那么满足这些条件呢，你都是一个土星友好的人。
And the Saturn trend could prove to be a productive time in your life.
那么土星的行进呢，可以是一个对你人生来说非常有收获的时期，有成果的时期。
A time of accomplishment and achievement.
这是一个获得成就的一个时期。
Time where your life becomes more structured and organized.
那么你的人生好像是更有结构，更井井有条。
Irresponsible people will have trouble under a Saturn transit.
不负责任的人呢，在土星行进的时候呢，他们就会遇到麻烦了。
And will typically experience the negative consequences of their irresponsible behavior.
通常呢，他们也会经历到他们不负责任的行为所带来的后果。
Including, but not limited to, legal penalties, sanctions, and sentences.
有时候甚至会发生一些法律上的，就是说带来法律的这样的惩罚，法律上的惩罚。
Many years ago, I had a client who worked for the county, taking care of juvenile delinquents. Do you know what a juvenile delinquent is? This is a young person, a teenager, who's broken the law, and they're now in jail.
那么很多年前呢，我有一个客户呢，他是在这个县的这样的法院，他处理的是青少年犯罪问题。
And they would bring me in to talk with him.
然后呢，他就会让我去跟这个年轻人谈一谈。
And this was a lot of fun.
这个很有趣。
Because I had their charts.
因为我手里拿着他们的星图。
And the thing I like to do was just look at Saturn.
那么我喜欢做的事情就看看土星。
And I could tell them when they got caught.
我可以知道他们什么时候被逮捕的。
And they'd all be like, "How did you know?"
他们都很惊讶说你怎么知道？
They must have told you.
他们一定告诉你了。
I said, "No, I can see it right here."
我说不，我就在星图上就能看到。
And then we would have an interesting conversation.
然后我们就会有一场非常有趣的对话。
About how maybe they could do something different with their life.
我们可以谈一谈他们的人生可以怎么样做就会不同。
And that how being behind bars was not really cool.
就是说在那个监狱的铁栅栏后面不是一件很酷的事。
Because it automatically meant that they didn't really believe in themselves.
其实这个意味着他们根本不相信自己。
And we had some long conversations about that. I used to like to do that work.
那么我们会开启一下长长的对话。我过去常常会这样做了很多这样的工作。
So Saturn can be an amazingly productive energy in your life.
所以说土星呢，可以是一个非常令人惊叹的，很有成果的这样一种能量。
Okay. All right. Jupiter. I know we're 3 minutes over, but I may go a little bit over.
那么我们现在有点超时了哈，不过但是我们把木星讲完。
Okay. Well, we all know about Jupiter.
木星我们都知道啊。
The moon. Jupiter is sometimes called the second sun.
木星有时候我们把它叫做第二个太阳。
It seems to have a warmth to it.
木星身上好像一种很温暖的能量。
And it's kind of like a big fat guy that takes care of you.
好像是一个胖胖的一个人，他照顾你的一个胖胖的人。
You know, not too many years ago, astronomers got all excited because a meteorite or an asteroid was going to strike the surface, was going to strike Jupiter, and they could watch it through the telescope.
很多年前呢，这些天文学家就非常兴奋，因为好像是有一个小行星会撞击木星，所以他们都很兴奋。
And it was really cool.
这个很酷。
You could see as this asteroid hit the atmosphere of Jupiter.
你可以看到这个小行星呢，它撞击到木星的空气里面了。
How it glowed.
然后它就是爆炸。
And then was absorbed and pulverized. You could see some of it.
然后就立刻被这个木星给吸进去了。
Jupiter has protected the Earth from getting hit by many such objects.
就是因为木星的存在，所以说呢，很多的小行星才没有撞击到地球。
And in our lives, it sort of puts its arm around us and says, "It's okay. It's going to be all right."
在我们的人生中，木星就像是它把它的这个臂膀搭在我们的身上，说没问题，一切都会好的。
I'm a big guy. I'll take care of you.
我是大个头，我能照顾你。
Go ahead, eat some more ice cream.
多吃一点冰淇淋吧。
Have some more dinner.
多吃些晚餐吧，晚餐多吃点东西。
Spend some more money.
再多花些钱吧。
All right. Jupiter encourages us, let's say, to open to life.
那么木星呢，它鼓励我们对生活敞开。
And sometimes this can be really amazing because we can become more adventurous and travel and learn things.
有的时候呢，这是非常令人非常高兴、非常赞叹的时期，因为我们可能会更多的旅行啊，我们更多的学习呀、我们更多的可能更多去冒险。
So you can also become wasteful.
但是呢，那个时候呢，你可能也会常常变得非常的浪费。
Extravagant and excessive.
你可能是做什么事情做过头了，太奢侈了。
You gain weight.
你可能会增重。
Your friends will come up to you and go, "Pang du du da."
你的朋友们看到你说你这个胖嘟嘟了。
Right. Do you have any Jupiter training?
他们会说你是不是木星行进了？
Yeah. It's great for taking classes, workshops, and all those things.
在木星行进的时候去参加课程啊、工作坊啊，这都是很棒的。
Okay. Now, this is the last point I want to make tonight, and we'll pick up here again next time.
那么今天呢，我们就讲到这里为止。那么下周呢，我们从这个地方再往后讲。
We know that Jupiter only stays in a sign for a year.
我们知道木星在一个星座只待1年，
Therefore, it only stays in a house for maybe a year, year and a half,
那也就是说，它在一个星座呢，可能也就只待1年或者1年半，
depending on
一个宫位啊，
the size of the house.
取决于那个宫位的大小。
Okay. You have a question?
影响的大，还是说它进来以后跟我这个本命里边这个相对的时候也影响大？他就讲的那个从就是说有一个影响
What's the problem?
1.5到2年内的那个主要是指的是降位，
这个指的是降位。
那宫位呢也会有。
You need to repeat their question for everyone. Okay?
那么这位同学问呢，他说天王星它进入宫位呢，刚才说的是7年，大概是影响的宫位7年，但是它进入宫位是在宫位的影响大呢，还是如果宫里面有行星，对行星形成相位的影响大？而且说就是当时我们说它影响这个行星是1年半到2年，那个是指宫位呢，还是指相位呢
What's the question?
When Uranus in a house, what influence that most in a house or have an aspect with planets?
The aspect has priority because that's what gets your attention.
那么就是说，当外行星和我们的个人行星形成本命盘个人行星形成相位的时候呢，它是有优先顺序的，因为是那个时候你会有更多的。
Think of it this way. Think it's
就这样想的。
very simple.
这很简单。
Think of these houses like you're renting them out to people.
你就把这个宫位想成，你把这样一个地方，你把它出租给别人了。
Okay. If you're renting your 8th house out to Neptune.
就比方说，你把你的第8宫出租给海王星了。
And you don't hear anything from them until the water doesn't work.
就是说你出租给这个海王星了以后呢，你就听到这个租客的声音了。但是如果是好像他们家发火了，你就听到了他们。
Or you get a call from them and they say, "It's leaking upstairs and water is filling the house."
就是说楼顶漏水了，这个家里面进水了。
This is because Neptune is now squaring your moon.
这是因为海王星它开始跟你的月亮形成4分相。
Okay. Now, maybe the whole time that the Neptune's in that house, you've got dysfunctional people in your house. Depending on what house it is and how you're dealing with it.
有时候也可能是当海王星在那个宫位的时候呢，在你们家里住一个功能失调的人，当然这个是取决于是哪个宫位，然后你是什么样的。
Depends on what your priorities are. Neptune could represent, if in its movement through a house, an area of your life that you're healing.
那么海王星它在经过一个宫位的时候，你意味着这个宫的领域呢，你在经历疗愈。
Or it could represent an area of your life that you're neglecting.
或者是这个宫位的事情呢，你在忽视。
Okay. But it's when it makes the aspect to the planet that it gets your attention.
但是当它跟这个一个行星形成相位的时候呢，会引发你的注意。
Or obviously aspects the angle.
或者是它 和你的四轴形成相位。
Okay. Now next time we're going to talk about short-term trends.
下一节课呢，我们会来讲一讲短期的行进。
These short-term trends are very important.
这些短期的行进是非常重要的。
Because they also serve as triggers.
因为这些短期行进，它是作为一个触发器。
As you will see next week in some examples we get into.
那么下节课呢，我们会有一些例子会讲。
These short-term trends, if you have Mars coming in and you've got a big Pluto transit going on.
如果你当时正好一个冥王星的行进，那现在的行进的火星又加入进来了。
Okay. Mars will trigger something around that Pluto issue for you.
那么这个火星呢，就会触发了你生命中的冥王星的这个议题。
We all know, even this is true of the generic cosmic weather.
我们知道这个在我们一般性的宇宙天气中也是如此。
We all know, and I'm sure there were millions of examples in the world, but since we live in Beijing, I'll use this example.
那么在世界上，其实因为就是这天气天象是世界各地都是经历同样的天象的，但是因为我们现在在北京，我们就用北京的例子。
Before Mars conjuncted Pluto, it was applying to Pluto for a week or more.
在冥王星，它在火星在合向冥王星之前呢，它一直在逆向。
And that was the week that someone died in the subway.
就是那个有人就在地铁上加死了。
With Mars moving, this is just one.
当火星就是说靠近冥王星的时候。
Right, so Mars was acting as a trigger for that energy. There was an event.
所以说那个火星呢，它作为一个触发器。
Okay, that's all I'm saying.
就是这个意思。
Okay, all right. So that's it for tonight. I love transits. Love transits. They're my favorite prediction tool. They're the easiest to use. They're the most obvious.
那么大卫说他非常喜欢行进，他用最喜欢的预测工具，他们非常的明显，也容易运用。
So another big question there. You think I have to answer tonight, or?
No, there's several people was hit by knives today.
Today?
After that Mars-Pluto conjunction.
Well, Mars is starting to step it's pretty far away from us.
这个不是火冥的相位了，因为这位同学说今天好几个坎宁的消息是不是火冥合相？那么现在火星已经离开了那个冥王星了。
Who knows? Take a look at it and see.
Some asked when the transit planets have harmonious aspect, what's the difference from challenging aspect?
It usually sometimes can either go more unnoticed or represent the resolution of something.
就如果是外行星和个人行星形成的和谐相位呢，它有可能是它过去了你都没有发现，或者它意味着有些事件得到了解决。
And even the hard aspects can manifest in a positive way.
那么其实挑战相位也可以以一个非常正向的方式表现出来。
The day that Mars and Pluto were conjunct opposing the moon, maybe a guy had a breakthrough in his relationship with his girlfriend. You don't know.
比如说冥王星合向火星对向月亮的那天，也许有一个男人和他的女朋友的关系获得了突破。
Maybe some guy confessed his love to his girlfriend.
或者是有一个人他向他的女友坦白了，就是说吐露他的爱意。
Maybe he finally got the courage and he said, I've been afraid that you would reject me.
也许他最终他获得了勇气，他可能对他女朋友说，我就一直害怕，如果我向你表白，你会拒绝我。
So that was a breakthrough for him.
所以说这对来说是一个突破。
Okay. What's the other?
There's a lot of questions.
I bet there are. This is going to be this transit part of the course has more questions than almost any other.
就是这个里面可能有更多的这个问题呢，会比其他的问题就更多一些哈。我觉得今天因为已经很晚了，估计我们回答不了这些问题了。我们下来那个会大家有疑问呢，可以贴在论坛上面，或者是